Look here, everybody. Dialogues with the Disinherited, disrupting the playground to prison pipeline, creates a space for a powerful podcast series, unveiling simple stories that illuminate hidden truths, tackling the troubling trajectory from the playground to the prison, amplifying voices and visionary insights. This work calls all of us to confront systemic struggles and cultivate passion. Enlightening exchanges and the promise of profound change is where hope and healing harmoniously unite. Don't miss your chance to be part of this critical conversation as champions of social justice.
Welcome in our viewers. We are back to challenge the change. This is Dialogue with the Disinherited, a series dedicated to disrupting the playground to prison pipeline and also confronting those systems that fail justice impacted returning citizens while using those same voices to uplift for liberation, healing, and freedom. This is a very special episode today, and I just want to welcome in our guest, Ron Pierce. Ron, why don't you tell us and the viewers a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am formerly incarcerated, having served 30 years of my life in prison. I also, upon coming out, received my bachelor's and my master's degree in criminal justice from Rutgers University. I now am the deputy ombudsperson for the New Jersey Office of the Correction Ombudsperson, which is an independent oversight body of the New Jersey Department of Corrections.
Yeah. Thank you, Ron. You've accomplished a lot. I'm certainly proud of you, as both you and I have done 30 years, and we did some of that time together. And you were also there when I came out those doors to welcome me back home. So you hold a very special place in my heart. I just want to quickly bring up something because we did a lot of schooling together. We took a lot of classes together. And I just want to just jog your memory. There was a certain class that we took, Politics and Vision. Do you remember that class?
Yes. And
you said something that was so funny because that book was like 1,000 pages, right? Maybe over 1,000 pages. And I remember you made a comment. You said that reading that book was like watching paint dry on the wall. You remember that?
Yeah, reading that book was like paint dry, and it was like reading sand. It was.
But thinking back now to a class like that and some of the other classes that we took, and do you think that that they prepared us for a day like this?
I think that book, as difficult and as pointed as it was, it not only prepared us, it actually gave us the tools that were necessary to be able to navigate a system that it helped us to understand. That class was really instrumental in a lot of the work that I did after I came home.
Yeah. So that book, Politics and Vision by Sheldon Wolin, that book is about radical democracy, and it's about putting democracy back in the hands of the citizens, and so that they can begin to make the decisions instead of corporations, and it's about changing the trajectory of the way things are.
Yeah, and excuse me. And it was changing the directory based on the knowledge of the historical juxtapositions of the different versions of politics over the centuries. You know, since the Greeks all the way up until present time, and Wolin was so instrumental in making sure you understood each aspect of it, that it really gave you an understanding that policies are changed by people's decisions to make policy change, and not just because time makes them change.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is important because our theme for today is policies for progress, and I just want to give you and our viewers the problem, just to put some context on what our discussion is going to be. So justice outcomes are determined by the interconnected web of policies and practices that affect people before and during and after incarceration. Harm is compounded for individuals based on race, socioeconomics, status, gender, disability, mental health, trauma, and geographic location. Policies governing policing, prosecutorial discretion, sentencing, incarceration, and supervision can unintentionally or deliberately reinforce inequities, increase vulnerability to technical violations, limit access to education and employment, and create barriers to community reintegration. While reforms such as sentencing adjustments, diversion programs, treatment courts, and restorative justice initiatives have been introduced, implementation remains uneven and resistance persists. This episode examines which policies are advancing progress and which continue to perpetuate harm, and how systemic change can be guided by both insiders and those who have experienced the justice system firsthand. Now, Ron, this overarching question says, how can justice policies from policing and prosecutorial discretion to sentencing, incarceration, and post-relief supervision be redesigned and implemented to reduce systemic harm, addressing inequalities such as race, socioeconomic status, mental health, disability, gender, trauma, and geography? Now, this first question is about understanding systemic harm and inequalities. What currently is the system doing, and how is it impacting people that are before prison, during prison, and now after prison?
Okay. Before prison, I would argue that not enough is being put on the front end. And by that I mean you don't have certain programs in schooling. You have no community programs that are based on real life situations, and so the communities that are better off are communities that are receiving certain teachings that are not available in like the communities I grew up in. They're not providing the front end money. For instance, it takes $70,000 a year to incarcerate a person. That money would be much better spent by providing programs in the communities that are more impoverished. I don't know if that's the right word, but more in need of certain programs such as after school programs, putting more stuff in the schools that actually relate to the child's needs rather than relating to an overall greater society. You have to make it community-based. If you don't make something community-based, me as a person that's living in one community can't understand if you're teaching me from somebody that is in another community. I have to know that my community matters. So that's prior to that. And also, policing also needs to be community-based. When we were growing up, and I grew up in the early 60s, right, there was an officer on the beat. Everybody knew him. If you got in trouble, you knew he was going to bring you to your parents, right? This was a way that didn't harm the child as much as if he had to be afraid of that police. I wasn't afraid of the neighborhood officer. He talked to everybody in the community. Today you don't have that. Today you don't have community policing. You don't have restorative kind of policing. If you get in trouble, you go into the precinct. The precinct is going to book you. You're going to be arrested, and there isn't that same community gathering. They say it takes a village to raise a child, right? Well, community policing is part of that village. So you don't want a community that a cop rides by with his window up, because now he's not part of that community. He's in the community because he's driving by, but he's separated by that glass. That glass is the same thing as having a veil. It keeps you separated. So you need that to have, if you're going to have policing at all, you need to have policing that is with the community and of the community, so that it understands the community. So that's where I think that community policing has a thing. You need to provide funding for the community to actually thrive. You can't let a community just flounder and die, because that creates more problems. Now, when if you get into the system, right? When I first got into the system, right, they had college programs, right? It wasn't matriculating toward a degree, but they had different programs. Slowly but surely, as you know, the get tough on crime policies and the sentences that grew and grew and grew, and more hurt, were taking away everything that was helping for people to come home prepared for a better life, and it wasn't doing anything better. It was harming. It was not only harming the communities that are being over policed, because now people were coming back not ready to re-enter society. They were coming back just having been harmed by the overindulgence in get tough on the sentence. Well, the sentences that are getting tough, and they're just more. I'm losing the word that I want to use. I'm sorry, but their sentences were getting more and more punitive. Yeah. That's the word I was trying to find. And the more punitive they got, right, the less benefit people were getting, so that they can come home. Mm. So when we got the opportunity to go to school, right, and get an education, we started to thrive. And so we needed more of that. We need more restorative justice practices, because if you remember when we were inside, they started a restorative justice thing called Focus on the Victims. Mm-hmm. Focus on the Victims was about bringing people that were victimized and explaining how it affected them. And one thing I'll never forget, this one person came in, and his house had been burglarized, right? And so he talked about how that made him feel while he was when he come home afterwards, that it made him not feel secure in his own home, and how whenever he came home after that, he would bang on the door before he walked in, because he wanted to make sure that nobody was in the house before he entered it, because he was scared. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're scared of your own living, and that made me understand that how impactful it was humanly for somebody to not feel safe in their home. And it impacted me, like, this is how your actions affect somebody else. And that helped me to understand that it humanized the whole thing. The crimes that I had committed in the past, right? I didn't think about them in that way. They were abstract thoughts, like, okay, if you did a burglary on somebody and they weren't home, all they did was lose property, but that's not true. That's not what they lost.
Yeah.
So they lost part of their own security. And so it made me look at crime and committing crime in a whole different way. And it actually helped me to focus later on in my life how I was going to help change the narrative and change the way that politicians see the policies that they implement.
Ron, so when we're talking about policies, right? Obviously we're talking about punitive versus restorative, and I remember not being denied education because of the time, the charge, and because it was like not in the grant. So it was like a body of us that was never able to get education. We were prevented from policies, prevented us from going to halfway houses, from working on farms. So it just seems like there's policies everywhere, right? And when you first came home, right, and you got that job at the Institute of Social Justice for New Jersey, right? And so that right there was really huge. That was like really big, and you were doing what was right. You were doing the right thing, and you were involved in the right thing. They hired you. They gave you a chance. And then I heard about a living situation issue. Could you explain? You know what I'm saying? That like some of the things that people will go through when coming home because of whatever type of policy.
Okay. Well, there was when I came home, you talked about the living situation. When I came home, I paroled to my girlfriend's trailer, right? And she told him I was coming home from prison. And they said, okay, have him come home, he'll fill out paperwork, and we'll just do the process. So I came home and I got paroled to her house. And I filled out the paperwork like they asked. And on Christmas Eve, we got a letter saying he must evacuate the premises immediately, or we're going to start proceedings to evict you. And by evict you, she owned the trailer. By evict you, they mean they're going to take the trailer away from her, which she owned. She bought, so she owned it, or they were going to make her remove the trailer from that property, which is the same thing as we're going to take your trailer, and so that creates a real big problem because of the policies of parole. Is you can't be homeless. I had no place else to go. I couldn't leave because paroled me to this address. So the policy of where I had to live was being disrupted. Now this was Christmas Eve, right? So I couldn't leave. And she was like, well, we'll fight them, which, is, very, very much, she didn't want to lose the house, but she also didn't want to lose me. And so I contacted my parole officer. Now, it's really, I want to give credit where credit is due, because this parole officer was really good. And on Christmas Eve, when I called him, he said, do you have to leave right away? And I said, I don't know. They just sent me this letter. He said, well, just stay there for now. But if you need to leave, we'll work with you to try to get you someplace else. And so he said, but if not, we'll get you in something. They would have put me in a halfway back program is what they would have did, which would have put me back in a jail situation. So that policy of not having housing, right, is very, very disruptive, because now I had I'm going to school, right? I'm getting my education, but I had no place to live. I reached out to the NJ STEP program, who put me in touch with the Rutgers Law School. Rutgers Law School helped fight the case of me being evicted. In the meantime, we were able to secure housing through the NJ STEP program through Reformed Church of Highland Park. But the very fact that they had such control over where I can live, simply because I had committed a crime 30 years in the past. And so I ended up being able to live in a residence, but I couldn't live with my wife because she had a trailer that the policies of the corporate trailer park was that nobody with a criminal conviction can live there. And had they said that, then at least that policy would have been known, but it wasn't known. So policies direct or indirectly and directly can affect outcomes. You can't be on parole if you don't have housing, right? And I couldn't live in a house. So if I hadn't to be unhoused, I would have had to go back to jail. It would have violated another policy of being able to live under the conditions of the parole packet that I signed.
Let me ask you this, Ron. In that moment, right, you did this 30 years, which is hell.
Yes.
Right? All the things that one has to endure, right? Or mentally, physically, you know what I mean, spiritually. And you got released on your first eligibility, yes. Right? And so things are looking good, right? And now you're home, right, with the one that you love. You get this letter, right? We heard the story, but tell us how you felt inside.
Oh, I felt like nothing, for all the good that I tried to work on myself, that nothing mattered, that it didn't seem to, nobody seemed to care that I had come home and I'm doing all these things that I'm trying to get my life back together. Like it didn't matter. Like I didn't matter. I was not completely accepted by anybody, by society. I was an outcast. And that made me feel like, why should I keep trying? And if it hadn't been for Karen, maybe I wouldn't have. She kept me grounded in saying, no, I'm going to make sure that people don't keep this up.
Speaking of Karen, we're just continuing to pray for her. She's in recovery right now from a procedure that she had, so we're just continuing to think about her and lift her up. She's an amazing woman, you know what I'm saying, that stood by our brother, man, all of those years and even now.
Yeah.
And that just leads us into like our next question that deals with policy reforms, restorative justice, but also resistance. Now, New Jersey has implemented reforms such as sentencing, which you well know of, the adjustments, right? We went back and forth, good credits and, 30 years to life, mandatory minimums, now 85%. We've also done diversion programs, right? They're trying to like redirect people to different like programs and stuff like that. Treatment courts, restorative justice initiatives, but the outcomes are uneven. Which policies are reducing harm and promoting opportunity, and which face the strongest resistance, institutional, political, or cultural. Now, in that context, Ron, how do these barriers continue to reproduce inequities in communities already affected by poverty, trauma, and limited access to education, employment, or healthcare?
So that's a whole big, big world of questions. But we'll start with the policies. Always start with studies. What's going to work? What can work, right? So I was part of when I worked at the Institute. I was loaned out to Rutgers University, Rutgers School of Criminal Justice, who is the technical support team for the Criminal Sentencing Disposition Commission. And under that, we did some amazing work and studies to try to show what was the most what crimes and were most likely to be most inequitable, most where as the biggest disparity in race and poverty. What was the biggest crimes? And the biggest crime, believe it or not, was second-degree robbery. So they made some policy recommendations because they're only a commission. The problem with making recommendations is now you have to get some politicians to actually make the recommendations. And one of the recommendations dealt with the disparities of young people being waived up. All right? So there was bills put out that would give a second look to kids that were waived up before the age of 18, because we know that the brain doesn't fully develop until over 25. And if you're living in certain parts that are trauma-induced, the brain actually takes longer to develop. So there was this big push to have this bill push, and they wouldn't pass it. They wouldn't move on it. There were, for whatever reasons, politics is the art of compromise. So you want to understand there should have been some compromise back and forth, but they wouldn't actually put the bill up for a vote. And it came to be such an issue because the Supreme Court was actually saying that you got to treat children like children. You have to treat them differently, and you can't give them life sentences. You can't give them virtual life sentences. And the state courts actually had to take the recommendations of the Sentencing Commission and say, you know what, the politicians won't act, we will. And that's how we get a Comer decision where now you have kids coming out that were locked up when they were 14, 15, 16 years old, coming out and doing amazing, amazing things. And these were what basically we called the throwaway kids. And they were throwing away black and brown kids by the bucketful, you know. And now, through a policy that actually should have become legislation law, right? That the governor was for and would have signed had it come into law, had to go through the court system to actually start getting implemented. And the problem with that, as we found out in the federal things, is if it's not in law, if it's only a judicial decision, another judicial decision could actually swap it out and change it. So it still needs policies to change. I'm sorry, I might have gotten off track. So can you redirect me?
No. That was you're on track, right? So, Ron, let me ask this question. So, what you're talking about, you said about the barrelfuls. So, like we're talking about late 80s, early 90s, right? And so now, what really has my concern is statistics were used to create punitive policies like super predator, those theories. They're coming up with all of these different statistics, right? And these statistics say that there's no value in these people, that they need to be locked up and never let out. And then they classified the certain types of people. Right? And that's just one example. There's been many examples where they've used statistics to pass policies and to do this and do that. But on the other hand, right, when there's been numerous commissions, right, that have the Vera Institute and all these other institutes have put research together and came up with statistics that refute these things. Why is it that it's so easy for them to pass with statistics on this end, but not on the other end?
That's a very, very interesting question, and the problem with the first statistics, right? Those statistics were not grounded in they weren't grounded in long studies. They were grounded in short blips of studies. Like if there was a rise in crime, they would react to an action. Like one action would cause a reaction to create policies and laws that actually were saying, oh, these are super predators, but it was over a short stem of time. And a longer stem of time where they actually studied the trauma of the community, the breakdown of family values, the very politics of creating a society that was twofold, and we call it the two tiers of one city. For instance, Newark, you have one part of the city that is very, very prosperous. And then you can go 3 blocks away and the houses look like they're falling down. So you have this despair in parts and this other things are great. And the problem with statistics, right, that are not grounded in looking at the whole, right, is that you don't get a real picture. You get a false picture. And that's what the policies of Get Tough on Crime were. And the policies of Get Tough on Crime created a thing where I can get votes if I'm tough on crime. Right? So now every time we get studies that refute these other studies, you still have the politics of I'm scared to be looked at as soft on crime because I lose my vote. And that's the issue even today, that you get all of these studies that showed that this works better, this works better. You can go to different countries that have lower recidivism rates and shorter sentences, better practices of those they do incarcerate, and yet they can't seem to want to change it. And that has three aspects to it. One, it doesn't get them to have the votes that they want. Two, those that are impoverished are not raising their voice enough to say, no, we're not going to let you throw our kids away. And three, you have what we have in the federal government today, which is the white supremacist ideology of they are and we are. So if you have the othering, once you other somebody, you could do what you want.
Oh man, Ron, listen, right? These okay, we talked about that super predator theory that came out
super
as
predator was definitely white
that came out as policy, but then we got this thing of mass incarceration, right? That right there perpetuated mass incarceration. Now all the prisons in New Jersey is overcrowded. That's when they brought in all the double bunks, you know what I mean, and so on and so forth. And now they're realizing the damage that is done to the community, to the families, and then other research comes out that disproves, so like you said, it was a blip, and now this myth was disproved. Please explain, when they find out that something doesn't work, that we got it wrong, why don't they move to get it right?
I wish I had a definitive answer for you.
Yeah.
I have what I understand is again, when we go to the legislators and there's bills coming out, and I'm talking to legislators, right? I'm trying to convince them to advance policies and to advance practices based on real good science, and those that understand it, they will argue with you right? But you end up having to go and even if they move the policy, right? You'll get the police union. You'll get certain organizations that are going to go against the policy because it doesn't advance their monetary needs. So they'll go against it because they're not going to get paid for it. And they're not going to get this mass incarceration, which, let's face it, is massive profits for the industrial the prison industrial complex. There is money to be made for people to be warehoused. There is money to be made from now New Jersey. You think New Jersey doesn't have private prisons? It does. Actually, it has many private prisons. They call them they call them halfway houses, but New Jersey's prison system now calls them RCRPs. I forget what the acronym is at the moment. I'm sorry, but these are the places where people go there. They work. The state pays them. They go out. They work, and they come back and they pay for their housing. That policy just changed. So I have to give credit to the Department of Corrections, who is saying we're paying the halfway houses. The people that are going there and going out to work shouldn't have to pay, but they should have to put money in, but they should get that if they follow all the rules. And there's a big policy adjustment there. But I'm sorry, I lost the question.
No, it's okay, Ron. Ron, you did. You're doing.
No, I think I lost that question.
No, you did. You that was like really on point, right? So like in closing, I got this really good and powerful question for you, right? We've been to the State House together. We've been on the floor and we witnessed democracy, right? As we call it, as we see it, right? A little bit different than what Sheldon Wolin was talking about, giving democracy back to the people. But when we're in the State House on the floor, right? And you said it, you hit it. There's people that are coming from all of these different unions that come to oppose, right? They come to oppose, right? We've even seen religious institutions come to oppose restorative justice bills and things like that, right? So let me ask you this. So how can faith institutions, community organizations, universities, policymakers, and impacted individuals collaborate to ensure that policies, especially those affecting people returning from incarceration or navigating supervision, create genuine pathways to success? Ron, I've named all of those institutions. What can we do?
Okay. I firmly believe, and this I learned from the Institute, I firmly believe that you have to start from the ground up. You can't be a top-down organization. You have to listen to those that have actually lived through it to understand what it is that their needs are. I don't care if you're a religious organization. I don't care if you're a policy organization. I don't care if you're Harvard University. If you don't understand from the person that is directly affected, you're not going to have an understanding of what the needs are. But you also have to help them to be able to not only navigate the policies that are being created and to speak on the policies, but you have to take them and let them lead the organization of change, because they know what needs to be. And I told this to, I forget what professor. One professor decided that they should be able to help. They should be able to lead the organization. I'm saying, but we are the ones that it affects. We need to be the ones that lead the way, and you need to support us with your expertise.
Yeah. Ron, thank you, man, so much. This was just a powerful episode. And like in closing, just to reiterate, right, policies, right? Like we need to get out. All of these institutions, you know, families, communities, we need to get out, you know what I'm saying, to influence the outcome of these policies. You know what I'm saying? We as a community, right, and as institutions, we have to organize.
Yes.
You know, so that's just a message for our viewers today. Like, it's important that you get involved. Ron, I just really want to thank you. There's just so much that we could just continue to talk about. It's just so much to learn. But thank you so much for coming today and sharing all of these insights with us. You can just continue to do the great job that you're doing. I appreciate you, and you inspire me, and I hope you've inspired all our viewers. God bless y'all, and just thank you for viewing in on with us today, and just continue to keep the faith.
Here are 3 valuable resources that can help churches understand how mass community corrections contribute to mass incarceration. Treatment Courts, Solving the Recidivism Problem by Christopher Salvatore. Decriminalizing Mental Illness, edited by Catherine Warburton and Stephen M. Stahl. Criminal Justice, Retribution versus Restoration, edited by Eleanor Hannon Judah and Reverend Michael Bryant. These resources will equip churches with the knowledge and tools needed to address the complexities of mass community corrections and their implications for mass incarceration. Dialogues with the Disinherited, Disrupting the Playground to Prison Pipeline, creates a space for a powerful podcast series, unveiling simple stories that illuminate hidden truths, tackling the troubling trajectory from the playground to the prison, amplifying voices and visionary insights. This work calls all of us to confront systemic struggles and cultivate passion. Enlightening exchanges and the promise of profound change is where hope and healing harmoniously unite. Don't miss your chance to be part of this critical conversation as champions of social justice. Look here, everybody.